But I love your choice of words on embodying gratitude. And thank you for your kind words and an amazing introduction. I appreciate that. But I I learned to embody gratitude. And so it was cultivated over time. And it goes back to a catalyst in 2013. So in 2013, this sort of catalyst event, I was at the time the head coach of the Canadian Olympic Development halfpipe ski team. I was a freestyle skier as an athlete and a coach, and really truly living my dreams, traveling the world, skiing 11 out of 12 months of the year typically is incredible. But on a routine trip, on a routine day that started out just like any other with my team on December 16th, 2013, my life kind of came to a complete full stop. While demonstrating a routine trick for my athletes, I I landed this trick, which was a 720, two full rotations where you take off forwards and land forwards, but I landed in punchy snow, which basically it stopped my feet dead in their tracks, causing me to pitch forwards onto my head and neck, and my feet came up over top of my body, if you can picture it like a scorpion tail. Bang, this brief but sharp pain in my neck, and then nothing. All I felt was like this massive uppercut from the ground. I tumbled to a stop, tumbled down the hill, slid to a stop, face down in the snow, and I couldn't roll over. I couldn't move or feel anything in my body. And my world in that moment, physically and figuratively, came crashing down. I knew that brief but sharp pain in my neck, and then nothing. Couldn't feel anything in my body or move. I just broke my neck and I was paralyzed from the neck down. Luckily, the athletes I was coaching at the time came to my side. Now they were the ones helping pick me up off the side of the ski hill, but they helped me get onto a spine board with ski patrol and the sort of first responders. Put me into a helicopter and flew me to Denver, where we were skiing in Colorado. And so that was the closest trauma facility, where I had two titanium rods and 10 screws surgically installed in my neck. They're still in there. And I but that surgery was the impetus, or the mechanism for me having a second chance at life with a working body. It didn't guarantee recovery, but it gave me a chance. And miraculously, after my injury, I started to heal. And it wasn't without immense grief and pain and suffering. I was in the hospital for 3.5 months. It took me that long just to get back on my feet, but fortunately I was able to walk out of the front doors of the hospital using my wheelchair at the time as a trolley to push out all my belongings to the vehicle. And from that point on, I had never looked back. I kept setting really ambitious goals for myself and checking boxes along the way over the years towards recovering physically have been pretty incredible. I still can't fully feel my legs, and I don't have full function or dexterity in my hands. And I deal with symptoms of a spinal cord injury every day, but I'm very lucky to be here.
One of the things that stood out for me in your story, Mike, is you said that there was a moment where the doctor was, standing at the end of your bed, with the chart telling you that be prepared, you might not be able to do skiing again. You might not be able to do a whole bunch of different things. And what was going through your mind when you heard that?
I'm glad you remember that from the conference a few weeks ago, but I woke up on the second day in the hospital with two gentlemen standing at the end of my bed. For those of you that weren't there at the event, I'll tell you the story. And these two guys were playing the part. They had white lab coats on. One had a stethoscope around the neck. The other one had a clipboard with my chart in it. And they were the doctors, and they were standing there, and they proceeded to tell me that, Mike, you should prepare yourself because you're probably never going to walk again. In fact, you might be lucky if you get back the use of your arms. And that did not include my hands at the time. And lying there completely paralyzed more or less. I had a little bit of function that had come back. I could close my elbows, so my biceps worked, but I couldn't open my elbows, so my triceps weren't even working. I had a little bit of shoulder shrugs. That was it. But I remember thinking to myself as I heard those words, wait, how do you know? I probably didn't say it like that. But the next words that came out of my mouth were, how do you know? And why are you telling me this? And they told me in their best judgment, their professional experience, the imaging scans didn't look good. The surgeon said my neck was really badly displaced, crushing my spinal cord. My central nervous system was interrupted at the C4, C5 vertebral interface, that joint. And it didn't look good. It looked like I'd probably never recover. But I remember in that moment thinking to myself, okay, I don't know if you're right. And the only person in this world who knows what you're capable of is you, right? Is us. It's us. We know what we are physically capable of more so than anybody else. We can't let anybody else try to define what's possible for us, or in this case, what was impossible for me. And so I have shared this with people all over since that moment, that you're capable of more than you think you are, or you can do more than you think you can do. And you may have heard words like that. Sometimes they're even like, slogans that are posted on the side of gym and exercise facilities, right? As standard motivation. But I like to subscribe to the ideology of you can do as much as you think you can do. So where you set your sights and your vision for yourself and your mindset and all of this is incredibly powerful. And in that moment, I set my sights on not just walking again, but maybe one day skiing and getting back to the mountains. And boy, am I sure glad that I did.
Yeah. You know, Mike, I love the phrasing that you're using in the fact that these gentlemen played the role, right? They are participants. And if we think of life as a stage and they are the actors, the story can change at any time. And I think it's the narrative we attach ourselves to that really tells us whether we're going to step into that potential or we're not.
Yeah, your personal narrative matters so much. And we have a couple of different types of narratives. Like we have stories we tell ourselves or we relive from our past, which can inform who we are, where we are today. And then there's the stories we tell ourselves about our future, the ones that we are yet to enact or to live out. And that story is just a story now. And so the likelihood of success or failure from this point forward are equally plausible. But where you put your focus, and I'm sure you've heard this before, where your focus goes, energy flows. And you're much better off to move towards success like it's inevitable. Choose to see yourself making the shot versus missing the shot. For one, it releases you from a lot of potential anxiety about what might be going on in your situation. But incorporating a narrative, weaving it into who you are and living out your story, as you say, like an actor on the stage of your own life, moving towards a goal or an existence that is so desirable for you is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And I honestly haven't really thought about it that much, but I started being the actor in my own story and living out all of these big, scary, audacious goals that I set for myself. And the story unfolded probably better than I could have even hoped. It's been pretty wild.
No, and I'm curious. I would love to hear like two things. One is, how did you handle if there was any negative naysayers? And I don't know if you've had, people who said, "Oh, come on, Mike, be realistic." Or or the second one is when you've had the off day where you feel completely exhausted and it's like, how do I stick with the vision I have of that future?
That's a great question. And I handled negativity by building what I call real optimism. And so my definition of optimism or real optimism is when hope and trust align. And so hope is very powerful, especially when you've been knocked down. You must hold on to hope. But the second part that's so critical is believing or having trust and faith in the process that it will unfold that way. And I used to remind myself that if it's not working out right now, it just means I'm not finished yet because things will always work out. And that last bit of that is the trust piece because it will always work out. And you've got to trust that if you're in the throes of whatever adversity you're facing right now, you might even be at your valley bottom, which is where I found myself sometimes. You've got to trust that you'll be able to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and climb back to your mountain peak.
That is very powerful. That is very powerful because it gives you that visual. Because when you're in that deep valley, there's nowhere else to go but up. So, you know,
That's
um,
true.
and that real optimism, because, sometimes people will say, well, you can't always wear those rose colored glasses. And I always say, well, what's the alternative? You know, what's the alternative?
Yeah, it really is a choice at some level to choose positivity. But if I were to ask you, what would you benefit more from, having more positive thoughts or fewer negative thoughts? What would you tell me?
Positive.
Most people respond with more positive. And
Yeah.
it's intuitively, it's logically, rationally, it seems like the right answer. But the answer is actually fewer negative
Yeah.
because negative thoughts are the only ones that can limit you, hold you back, or keep you stuck. And so if you don't deal with the negativity and learn to identify it, challenge it, and cut it out, or just modify your thinking so that you're either choosing neutral or above thinking, it's okay to look at something objectively, have a neutral perspective on it. But if you cut out negativity, what are the other alternatives? It's neutral or positive. So you'll naturally have more positivity in your life. And guess what? Then you get the benefit of the way that you answered the question, more
Yeah.
positive. But the
Yeah.
way to that is through identifying and cutting out the negative.
No, I think that's really important what you've just shared because one of our previous guests on the podcast, one time I heard her on the panel, Sandra McCulloch, she was talking about how when people are on their social media, that their social media is actually a accumulation, curated part of their inner dialogue.
Mm.
And that what you just said really hit me because I was thinking about, recently my social media, what's in my feed, what's feeding my mind. And like you said, when you realize that that negativity is there, if you cut some of those things that are coming up, whether it be elections or
Oh
whatever
my,
other information that comes up that's not feeding your soul, then you have room for more positive.
yeah, we've got to get the algorithm recognizing positivity. That's a really good idea because we have a lot of different sources that influence how we think. It could
Yeah.
be our close relationships, family members. We know
Mhm.
people that are often negative in our lives, that if you
Yeah.
have an idea, there's often a reason why it's not going to work before they give you any reasons why it will work.
Yeah.
And we have that in our work lives too, in our businesses and in our partnerships, where it's not always all positive. And especially with the media and the types of information we consume, you can prime your brain with more positivity if you start seeking it intentionally. And I really like that. I've never really thought about, and I don't know if I know exactly how to cultivate it, but you'd have to start really training the app to change its algorithm so that you
Yeah.
start buying it. And it's a really, those algorithms are powerful, so you've got to be intentional about it. But that's a nice metaphor because changing the way you think takes time.